Okay, finally live. Interesting. Uh-huh. Well, I think you can hear. I don't know. I haven't seen anything yet. We can do better lighting. We have a better light here. We have a better light. Let's go with the other light. There. That's a better light. There we go. Okay. Ha. Haven't seen anybody on that one yet. With the chat, I could put that up in there. This is just a test to see what else is going to go on the setup. I have had some bizarro shit with networking stuff lately. I'll get the other machine up here and get my regular live thing set back up. Get the full bandwidth to my other access point, and then we'll have normal shit going on. Oh, I spilled my coffee. So I was gonna have my brother get on here earlier, but he wasn't available. So I just decided to run this one on this channel because we're having bizarre shit with the other one. So now we're using this one. But anyways, it's been an interesting adventure from Hampton to Little Creek, Little Creek to Rudy Inlet, Rudy Inlet to Oregon Inlet, and then basically down to Ocracoke because that was another bar we just about got sucked over. Pretty close. If it would have been nighttime, I would have probably been in a lot of trouble. Probably got sucked right in there. There was like 12 feet of water, and then it went down to like 7 and 9, and went into the 4s and 6s and shit like that. We would have been drug up on a bar. We were 12 nautical miles from Ocracoke north entrance, and I didn't think there was anything on the other side of the island. I was familiar with the south entrance, and I know water goes over both sides because it's an island, obviously, but I didn't realize that the north entrance actually has a lot more water going over it because it's about 6 feet deep, maybe or less, 3 and 4. It's shallow, but it's a big, wide area that's open. And the south entrance has a similar. It looks like a big crab, 2 claws, and there's like a barrier reef, not really even a but there's some land on it, so it keeps the sea from coming up in there when the waves are up. But the current goes around a little half moon shape, and a lot of current flows around that little triangle shaped island. Let me tell you, in the middle of the triangle, there's a little island for Ocracoke, and it goes off up to the. Let's see, it goes up this way. It goes up to the north, and we came down to it. Actually, we came down from this way. We came down north, and then there was a point on it, a little point, and I was avoiding the point, and I got pulled over, so I kind of lost wind there, and I was going to regroup, so I anchored for a bit, and I had the time wrong on the tide. It was correct tide at the inlet, 9:22 in the morning. I think it was the morning of the 17th. 17th or 18th, I can't remember. We were kind of sailing around the clock through a lot of that. So I called it a night, and then I was going to pull up anchor, and I did, and I gave it 45 minutes, so it definitely should be flowing the other way. Because usually it's 45 minutes between the inside and the outside. So it's about an hour and a half later by the time I got going. And I literally pulled off anchor under power, and we didn't go anywhere. We creeped forward, because it pulled up on anchor. But by the time I got the wind and got sails set, we were going backwards. Although we're sailing forward through the water, I didn't realize that we were going backwards because I didn't really look at the map thing. I was just kind of looking around and getting the wind. Wind figured out and setting sail and trying to catch an angle, and I look and we've been going backwards the whole time. And we drifted 1.5 miles back by the time I could even think of shutting anything down and getting anchor back down. So I was like, fuck, this ain't gonna work, this is totally screwed up. What the hell's going on? And the tide was still rolling out. And it was probably 2.5, 3 hours later before the tide stopped flowing. It doesn't really flow in there. You don't get a tide going the other direction. It just flows out less. So there's tide coming in north of there, and the rivers are going out. And I didn't think about all the rivers that are feeding that area. So that area will flood from below because they get a tide earlier. So it creates a kind of a circular motion of salt water up in there. Comes in and pours up and then goes back out, So it was a little misleading. And then I decided to look at the bottom scan, not just the depth maps, but actually look at the scan at the bottom, and I could see where it had carved it out. I got all the details. I was like, shit, we're in a little, in between shoals, and we're in a little like natural drainage area, and it gets shallower right where I was at. So that's why the current got so strong. Went from casual to like started to get intense. So luckily we got out of there. I mean, that was full sail, full wind. Waited till the wind came up later. Direction changed a little bit, so I changed my plan. But we managed to get out of there. That was an adventure in itself. So that's actually a whole nother may as well another event. It's like going somewhere else for the day or going to another port. That was a whole thing in itself. In the middle of just anchoring to take a short break and get rested and then wait for the tide to change, because obviously I was fighting the tide. I was too close to the ocean. So I had to take a break for the tide again, and the time was definitely off. 2.5, 3 hours maybe over. We've seen 3.5 hours completely off. The tide is just completely, it's like a wave. It was really bizarre. It's local knowledge is like 100%. You can look at it and say, okay, I could be dealing with this, and I might be dealing with this, and this will have an effect on these things. So I need to consider these things, and you can kind of prepare for it. And sometimes, it's not half bad. It'll be kind of like you're thinking. Sometimes it's not at all like you're thinking. So those areas in there in the Pamlico, middle Pamlico, are pretty sketchy. They're just, wow. You never know what you're going to get. And then the wind direction pushes the water from one end to the other. So that affects, if the wind was coming out of the south for a day and a half, 2 days, those flows are going to be different. I know the flows are going to be there. I'll be mindful of the tide and the time difference. Be a completely different scenario because it's like a triangle. So it's going to flow completely different. So that little catch-22 is kind of fun. It let me know that I wasn't abreast of everything that was going on that I thought was going on. Let's see, where's my thing here? I don't know why it did that. Bizarre. Anyways, so that was really an awakening. And then we lost a good part of a day trying to beat this thing through that area, which was insane to begin with, because it takes about 3 days to go down there, realistically, leaving yourself a little room for weather, situation, anything, you're cutting it close. Then the other part was we got to the lower end There's a couple shoals that are underwater. Shallow draft boats don't have to worry about it, flat bottom boats. But we definitely could run aground. There's 5'9", there's 6 foot, there's 7 foot bars. The main bar is like 7 foot. So the shallow draft boats don't have to even think about it. They just go over it. They're mindful of where it's at, but they're not gonna get near the bottom. It's pretty flat. The one shoal we went over was over a half mile wide. It's pretty long shoal, pretty wide shoal, and there's a spot that's 10 to 12, about 11 foot, 10, 11 foot's the average, but there's 2 12 marks on there, so you kind of take it in northwest to southeast angle, kind of north to south, but it's a west to east cut if you want to stay in the 11, which is not a big deal, but if there's swells out there, it can be a big deal. It can throw you on the bottom. And it's not just a little bar you're going to go over. It's the length of your boat or a couple hundred feet. It's half a mile. So you get stopped in there. The tide changes or the wind. I was worried because the wind was blowing the water out of the north end. So I knew there'd be current flow over it. And there was. There was sideways current. There was some eddies that actually, like the wind turned me on almost by the time I could react, it had me going the other way. So that made it really interesting. At night, it would really suck. It sucks to cross that thing at night. I did. But by the time I got near the other side, it was daylight, daybreak. Sun was rising. That's when I took those sunrise pictures. And it took about 45 minutes to cross it. And it was really, really weird because at times you feel the current turning around. Like, oh, I hope it doesn't get any stronger or I might not be able to make it all the way across. And the water was getting shallower at the north end and deeper in the south end. It's like a big swimming pool. It's about 135 miles long. Give it 5 or 6 hours, the water is moving from one end to the other. So yeah, that is a lot of interesting dynamics. Then there's a hurricane coming. No big word on, is it going to make landfall for sure? It has the potential. It's extra big, It's potentially could be a fucking super nightmare. A lot of potential for, like, if this goes south, this is going to be really bad. And this is the last place on earth I'd want to be, and I'm smack in the middle of it. I'm a day and a half to either side of it if I got good wind. And then on top of it, I had to sail downwind, which is the slowest form of sailing there is. 3 knots. We hit 4.5 a couple times with the motor coming out of there. We got some current behind us, some tide, and a good gust of wind. And but that was just peaking out for a second. But most of it, we were about 2.5. We eventually started getting more wind at the end. So it wasn't a heavy wind. We wanted to get out of there before the wind built up. So we were racing the storm that was headed for us and from the south. And the area we had to get through was potentially really hazardous for that kind of weather. And we had to beat it down there. And the wind switched up once for part of a few hours or part of a day. Just came out of a weird angle. It was at least 3-4 hours. It was pretty cool. And I was like, oh shit, did I look at the chart? I got the wrong day and we're going to get wind in another direction, because you've got to literally, tack your way across to keep going if the wind isn't at your angle. Well, then the wind turned up and came the right way and was on our tail most of the way, but it was so close to dead behind us, you got to pick left or right, port or starboard. And you can't, if you're going to run straight downwind, you're stuck at the wheel, and it will never be happy. It'll always try to go the other way. So you need about 10 degrees to either side of you, and then it changes the angle at which you can make your little tack marks. You might be doing a nice triangle down, and now suddenly you're going like this, and then like this, and then like this. So it had the potential to get really uncool, but the weather worked out. It was amazing. It was right on the edge. Kept me right on the edge. I was constantly trying to trim it And you got to go through, different navigation points to here, and then you can go up here because there's something across here. But you keep aiming towards it because the wind's turning. Part of a day of that, the day before there was a little bit of that. The wind just went out of the angle, and I had to change my whole strategy. So you end up down here. You're thinking you're gonna come down here and go up, and you go down here, and now the wind's got you that way, so you got to go straight. Yeah. We did 2 triangles, one outside of Virginia Beach for about 6 hours, and that was after 2 days of trying to get the vessel to sail south and be able to stay off the shore. If you head south, the coastline, as you go down, the coastline comes out and then it goes back down underneath for the Cape, and the wind is just bringing us, literally bringing us in. It's coming up out of the south, and it was crazy for a little bit of it, just trying to figure out what was really going to hit, because we had local weather moving through, but yet we know there's a vacuum cleaner coming up the coast, which is going to drag wind around in a circle, counterclockwise. And when it gets close enough, it's going to start bringing air from the east. We're going to get an east blow, and then it's going to go more northeast, and then eventually north, and then when it goes by, it'll whip out of the northwest a bit, and eventually a little west if it goes by. But if it makes landfall, it's going to be complete fucking chaos. So you got to plan that if it does bear down on us and start coming ashore, we have some way out or away from land. We're stuck in this little inland, and we can't have it blowing us against the land, because we're not going to be able to hold anchor, and we're not going to be able to defeat the wind. The vessel will sail upwind, but if you go downstairs and you just leave it sail upwind, it'll say we were in a squall when we left Virginia Beach area. After we got out of Rudy, we were in a squall of 50 knots plus, and I tuned the vessel at like 40 knots plus. Came downstairs and said, okay, as long as the rigging holds up and she stays together, we're under extreme wind and really loaded hard. We had too much canvas up, but couldn't do anything at that point. So we sailed towards land, because we were already in that configuration. I wasn't going to be able to bring it about. I would have blown out sails or destroyed rigging or collapsed the whole fucking rig, So it's like, there's no hope of that. I'm not even going to play with that. That's almost guaranteed we're going to destroy the boat. So just run with it and head her up into the wind as much as possible to reduce the loading. But we got hit with a squall, because we were 25 knots, 30. So I said, okay, here comes this storm front. And we were prepared for that. And then out of nowhere comes a squall at like 50, easily 50, gusting to what? It wasn't too gusty. So it didn't gust much over, but it was 50 knots. We were laid right over. And it's coming up on our quarter. At the same time, we're in this 30 knot blow from, so we're getting hit with 2 different, it was crazy. And we went downstairs, and I think it was about 25 minutes maybe. Could have been 45, I don't remember. It wasn't 5 or 10. And we sailed until that storm passed, very slowly, like a slow walking pace. But we only had 1.5 miles to go till we got too close to shore. So, is the storm going to pass by before we, drive ourselves onto the beach or too close to shore? Luckily, the one was blowing off the land a little bit, and that was the prevailing weather. And the squall that blew up was blowing off the ocean at like 90 degrees to that. So it was just crazy. So we got a little experience with dealing with that, and decided we weren't going to put the bigger canvas up if there's any threat of squalls. But then when we got down to the Pamlico, we got in wind, and we had to get out of where we were at. It didn't matter. So I let out the second reef, and we went for bigger canvas, which is over 3/4 of the rig which is a lot. And I only had a standard Jenny on, which is 100%, but it's small for the canvas for the mainsail. You need like a 130, 140 to really handle that. 150, 160. It had a 150 or 160 on it. I haven't measured it, but at least a 150. And so I have no way to balance the full canvas of the mainsail. So I know better than to put that thing up. It's just going to drag us downwind. It'll turn us about and jibe us in a heartbeat. So this thing will run upwind unless I let the sail out. So I kept it fairly close hauled, but not enough to where it was driving us downwind. I let the head sail pull us through it, and we were moving at maybe a knot at the most, 3/4 of a knot, maybe a knot. We were actually moving, but we're just plowing water with a lot of weather helm on it, making us go slow and heel over hard. So it's like almost a hove too, but not quite. And it worked fine. It stayed stable. It was actually a fairly smooth ride. It just shook the boat a lot of shaking and noise, and just going, oh boy, as long as the wires hold up and everything, we'll make it through. And we did. So we learned from that we didn't want to get caught with all that canvas up. But when we got down south, we were at a point, and I had the storm sail configuration. We got dropped off after we got a tow assist through the bar, and the guy was kind enough to bring us down the old house cut, so I didn't have to try and navigate that under sail. Because there was some weather, there was some weather, there was some wind involved, and he dumped us off down there. I got it turned around and went to set the sail, and as soon